Amen. Hey, church, y'all go ahead and grab a seat. Hey, so like I said, this is Centerpoint's 25th anniversary. So we've got something a little different in store for you today. So Pastor Jay has this thing that he likes to take elders and some staff on called the CPC Journey. And so that goes from one place to the other, starting at Woodland Heights and then Pastor Jay's grandma's house and all this stuff. And really what it is, it's the story of Centerpoint. It's our story. So I hope you enjoy seeing, hearing, learning your story today. Let's take a look.
Hey, church, let's take a ride. Okay. So, yeah, this is where the dream was born. It's Woodland Heights Baptist Church, and at the time, I was in seminary, and I had forgotten, but when you go to seminary, you've got to put your resume on file. So I wasn't looking for a church. I was still working a corporate job, and I was working for a company in Fort Worth when Woodland Heights, out of nowhere, Woodland Heights called me for an interview. So I met with their search team, and it was for an executive pastor job. It's the number 2 position. And I came, and when I interviewed, I even went home that night and told Regina, they're not gonna hire me. I had more questions for them than they had for me. But then they asked me to come back, and so I did, and I interviewed again, and the second time, I knew they'd really thought through it, and they offered me a job as their executive pastor, and automatically I was handed the staff and then some of the programming ideas. And we dove in, and God bless, the church began to grow. We were about, 250, 300 when I got there, and within about a year and a half, we'd grown to well over 400, close to 500, and we really started reaching out. We got involved with the community. I got the church out into the community, and it started working, it started growing. But one of the challenges was, it was a lot of transfer growth from other churches. And Regina and I even actually started going out to a local bagel shop between our services, just hanging out, and we started building relationships with people outside of church. And we invited them here, and a couple of couples came, but again, the culture was just so different. It was hard for them to connect. And so honestly, I really considered quitting the ministry and going back to a secular career, because my heart has always been reaching the lost. That's who I am. I'm an evangelist. And so just evangelistic at heart, and also want to make an impact on the community. So I was about to quit the ministry when a friend of mine, Bob Roberts, over at Northwood Community Church, he told me, he introduced me to a couple of guys, John Wooster and Harold Bullock at Hope Community Church. And I went and sat down with them, and then they introduced me to another guy by the name of Rick Warren, and the purpose-driven church and the model and church planting, the whole idea. And so we met these people, and Regina and I even went out to California, and we got the privilege of meeting Rick Warren and his wife, and just seeing Saddleback and the whole process. And that's when we knew that God wanted us to start a church for the unchurched. And that's the day that Centerpoint Church, the dream, was born.
Okay, when Jay first suggested we start a church, I understood that he wanted to start a church for lost people. Because we were in a church that was more concerned about lawn care than evangelism. Voting on the color of the carpet and things like that. And that was not helping the kingdom grow, and we was very frustrated. And so we had both read the Purpose Driven Church book and realized that that's what God wanted us to do. So it's excited for that point, and excited to reach lost people, because lost people, if they're unchurched, they don't know what a pastor's wife is supposed to look like or supposed to do, that they're supposed to play the piano, they're supposed to lead the ladies' Bible study. So I knew that I could just be me and use the gifts God gave me.
In May of 1998, we started to move on our dream about a church for the unchurched. And I was afforded to meet here. It's 4900 Dory Court. This is actually was my grandmother's home. And because of health issues, she couldn't live there. So she opened up her home to let us start a church there. And I was still working at my former church, and they were aware and they were supportive. And so I started meeting here on Sunday evenings. And there was 2 other families from our former church that wanted to help us. Brad and Chris Sullard and their 2 children. They were going to have another child. And then Jeff and Becky Hyde. So there was the 3 founding families, the Sullards, the Hydes, and the Bruners. There was 6 adults and let's see, there was about 8 kids, and that was us, 13, 14 started. And before long, we had about 26 people here, adults and kids. And we were learning how to become a church for the unchurched. A couple of key things happened here, and one of them was kind of funny, but from the very beginning, I wanted our church to be a welcoming church. So when our people would start arriving for the services in the evening, Regina and I would be standing out on the front porch with a piano bench. And on that piano bench, we had printed out listening guides or kind of little bulletin things just off my computer and a printer. And as people would walk up, we'd say, "Welcome to Centerpoint Church." And they would look at us like we are the oddest people in the world. Here we are. We know everybody that's coming, but yet every time they came, we were always there to welcome them. And then we started teaching them to do that, because it's still true. We even discerned our name here. What we did with Clyde's help, the landscape architect, is we were talking about creating a church for the unchurched and what they would look for and what would they want and what it should be named. And it was funny. He took it to his office and he asked several of his co-workers. He told them about our church. He told them about our vision. What should we name it? And as we talked about it, they helped us discover, oh, you're trying to help people discover and live a God-centered life. And we said, that's exactly what we're trying to do. And they were the ones that helped us birth the name Centerpoint Church. It was also here that we determined how this church would be led. We really searched hard and read the scriptures, and we just went to the New Testament church. And we realized God didn't send a committee to lead a church. He didn't send a congregation. He sent Christ and his disciples. And then he showed us in the New Testament about how a pastor and elders lead a church to care for it. And so that's how we came up with how we would be governed. I know, real radical, right? We're just going to follow what the Bible did. And it was just really amazing how God just unfolds it when you just look at him, trust him, and follow.
So my favorite memory of meeting at Grandma's house is we not only did Sunday morning church services there, but we also did our 101 classes, our membership classes there. And Grandma Bruner was not living there, but we were actually living there, but she had been moved to an assisted living. But we asked her to come and be with us during this time because Grandma Bruner had started, and Grandpa Bruner had started some churches themselves, so it's very special to them. So at one time at our 101 class, Jay was explaining about baptism and how that we, after you receive Christ, you should get baptized, by immersion, because that's the way Christ did it in our example. And Grandma Bruner said right there in the middle of the membership class with her bony little finger, Jay Kirk, you know that you were baptized right there in that baptism as a baby. So she has the baptism that they used in the Methodist Church in her home. Now it's in our garage if anybody wants to see it. On Saturday night is the thing we did. Our kids, Desiree and Cole, would help us fold the listening guides. And you know what? Praise God for the women who do that today. They are still hand folded. But we made our home church more like we tried to make it more like a church building. And so we greeted them at the front door. We had our listening guides out on a piano bench where we could hand it to them. We had a children's area in the master bedroom where the children could go and learn their own lesson. Jay tried to preach, a lot of hand raising and asking questions, but that was okay. They were learning. Those people were unchurched or unfamiliar with church and learning all about Christ. And that even continued on into the movie theater. When we transitioned to the movie theater, those people came with us and they would raise their hand and ask questions and during James' sermon. And so that went on for a little bit until they kind of learned what church is supposed to look like.
And it was just an amazing time. Our first service here was in August of '98, and it wasn't even to the public. It was just our little team coming, and we just showed up here just to start getting used to it. As a matter of fact, I'll never forget that first Sunday because we didn't have the sound system and all the things ready. We were just meeting here, we had a service, and then we just walked around trying to figure it out. But before that happened, I'll never forget Sam Carmack at Bear Valley Community Church, who just really supported us, encouraged us. He actually asked me to come preach at his church. And I did that summer of '98. I preached, and after I got through preaching, he got up and told his congregation about Centerpoint Church being a church plant and about to start here in this theater in the fall. And he told his members, some of y'all need to go and help him. It was the most humbling and amazing thing to watch that. And he taught me in that moment how to keep my hand open for the kingdom. And then we were ready to have our first, what we called our practice service in September. So we'd been in here for about a month. We'd made the pipe and drape. We even made a platform. They let us build a deck in one of the theaters as the stage. And we got portable lights and a sound system, all this stuff. And then what I did is with our little small band, which had grown to about 30 people in all, adults and kids, I told every one of them, try to write 40 personal handwritten invitations to friends to come check out this new church. Anybody and everybody that they could think of, invite them. Well, that first Sunday, that practice service, we had 150 people show up. And we grew to a church of about 125 to 150 people. Some pretty significant decisions occurred there too. And that is, one, we had already determined that we were an elder-led church. That just like the New Testament, that we would put together elders and they would oversee. But at this moment in time, we also learned something else, that there was a distinction. The elders and I really worked through it, that there was a distinction between elders called out of a church and then a senior pastor called by God. And that's when the church made the determination, the elders and the church agreed that the senior pastor would be the first amongst equals when it came to the elders. And that should a senior pastor ever leave or a change occur, the elders would go find another senior pastor. But again, God puts that senior pastor in place. He's to be the visionary leader. And we still hold to that tenet today. Now, one of the fascinating questions I get asked a lot is, why do we call our sanctuary a theater? Well, this is why. Because this is where Centerpoint Church was born, a theater. And so we also use that language because, God's not in a box. He's in everyday life. He walks with us in every avenue, the streets, the neighborhoods, and even theaters. So that's another reason why we call Centerpoint Church's sanctuary a theater. It's a CPC theater. It's where God's church meets.
We first started attending Centerpoint in July of 1999. The church had launched in October, and when we came, the church was still meeting at the movie theater.
Yeah. At that time, it seemed like there was more people on the stage than there were people sitting in the congregation. So when we first came, we were on staff kind of led the the student ministry and the worship ministry, and those are fun days.
Those were fun days, good days.
We were a mobile church at the time, and so we had a group of people called the Movers and Shakers, a group of guys that would come together and help us set up for the day to transform a movie theater into church services.
Oh gosh, so the movie theater days, man. Movie theater days were interesting. I remember came in one Sunday morning to be the Movers and Shakers, right? So the Movers and the Shakers were the group of guys that got together and basically set things up for church. And so we had sometimes have to come in and cover movie posters, right? So you're coming into the movie theater and there's a half-naked picture of, Tomb Raider, Laura Croft, or Angelina Jolie or something, whatever on the wall there. So we're having to cover that up. Another thing we would do, Jim Kendrick and I, and a few others sometimes, would have to go out to the parking lot and pick up beer bottles and cigarette butts. And so we'd actually clean up the parking lot at the movie theater before coming in. So it was just always kind of interesting, and it was just, it was cool though, because the thing about the theater for me that made me connect with the church was that the people were real, right? It was a real church. It was real people, a real pastor, right? And he was like, there was no air, They accepted you for who you were, and trust me, when I walked in the door, I was a mess. So, it was one of those situations where you just kind of felt at home,
We also met later on in a location of the health club, the Bedford Health Complex. And it was a little bit different, but we had this big old gymnasium that we set up in. And you remember we set up kids' classrooms and youth in racquetball courts. And it was so loud trying to not only try to function to have classes that worked in the racquetball court, but so that way it didn't carry over into the auditorium.
Okay, so after moving here, two extremely significant things happened. First of all, we constituted as a true church. See, up to that point, we were actually a church plant from Bear Valley. But once we got here, then we actually constituted and legally became Centerpoint Church, a Centerpoint Community Church, doing business as Centerpoint Church. And at that time, we had our first board of directors, our first board of elders. They were practice elders, as we called them, but we needed them, and for legal, the legal ramifications, and then also, for the leadership of the church. When we constituted, I became the CEO, the president, which I still am today, and Regina's still the secretary of the board and the church, and so it was a very defining moment for us. Another thing that happened is we also began church planting. Here's where we also started our own planting movement. We started helping other churches plant. Our first plant was David Rathel in Rivertown in Athens, Georgia. We were also part of a group called Team Church over our local seminary, and we would help other churches in the area like Stonewater down in Granbury. Many other churches get started, and this is where we really got involved with church planting. I even got a team that went out to Saddleback, and we learned how. I went down to Brazil and also Honduras, helping people learn how to plant churches. This is where that tradition of church planting began and continues to this day. So the health club was an amazing time of transitions and growth. We became a church. We started planting other churches. We incorporated. We got our first senior pastor. We got our first elders. Then we hired our first other full-time staffer in Matt, and we continued to grow. Went to 2 services.
They had already, I think, had purchased the land
Yeah,
from the health club, so that was already sort of done before we came on. But we would come out and we'd walk the land, we'd pray for the land, we'd clean up the land, getting ready. So it was very meaningful to know that this was going to be our new home.
And we also all signed little rocks that we put around in the foundation of this church. So there's a little piece of us in every one from the health club and before. So, and we came out and we cleared this land.
In 2004, June of 2004, we had our first Sunday services. And at that time, we were about 230, 225, and it was crazy because within just a few months, we we grew to 450, and there we were on the go. But God was doing something else other than just building us. He was also stretching us. We kept planting other churches, helping churches, and this is how it happened. First of all, the tsunami in India hit, and it just devastated that country. And so we thought about Acts chapter 2 and just saying, hey, we're going to be that kind of church. We're going to sell our possessions, and we're just going to sacrificially help someone. So what we did is we had a garage sale. And we raised $17,000 that day. It was crazy. And then we tried to find a relief agency to get it to India, and we just kept struggling and kept struggling. And so finally we just said, you know what, we're just going to do the apostolic thing. We're going to put a couple of guys on a plane, and we're going to send them to India. And we ended up going to Hyderabad, India, and then we went down to the coast, and they found a village that had been wiped out. And what we did is we helped build 6 boats, a fishing village, and put them back in business. It was amazing. But in the process, we also discovered another opportunity to plant a church, plant an international church. And it was in Hyderabad, India. And we sought out to find an indigenous church planter, and we did, Abby and Bernice Vapula. And so we went there several times. We put on conferences. Regina even went and spoke to pastors' wives, and many of our people, Brian Erickson and Don Robinson and many others went. Levy Gamble went and taught them how to do sound, and it was just an amazing journey. But Abby and Bernice gave birth to Fusion Church, which is still going today, and now not only going, but it's prospering, and even started another church.
Well, Katrina hit New Orleans, and there was a big group that wanted to do something for that. So we got some money together and sent it to New Orleans. New Orleans Area Hope, NOAA. And so through NOAA, we were able to get connected to a house. There was, water halfway up the wall. It was destroyed. We gutted the place. We tore everything out. We put in brand new sheetrock, brand new roof, brand new everything. We totally rebuilt that house, and it was just a mission of love.
Whatever God has next, I've seen visions of different things throughout the time. Somebody asked me one time, why are you still here? And I was a part of a vision that I didn't even know I was a part of. And now I'm seeing visions of what God can do even later. And to tell you what I saw is incredible, and it would take too long. But just to tell you that where we're going, it's gonna be awesome.
What an incredible story. Hey, look, right now, here's what I want everybody to do. Give a very warm and thankful Centerpoint welcome to our pastor, Jay and Regina. Would you guys come up here? Hey, the elders have a gift that they would like to share with you guys as well.
Pastor Jay, congratulations on 25 years. What an awesome accomplishment.
Thank you.
I have the privilege on behalf of the elders and the church to present you with this statue. It says, Pastor J. Kirk Bruner, 25 years of faithfully answering the call. Centerpoint Church, October 2023. So I want to say thank you, and also want to pass along kind of the significance of the statue there. This is called the calling, and it is when Christ called Peter to leave his nets and follow him. And he says it's a perfect reminder for anyone who has answered the calling of Christ in their life So Jay, just thank you for stepping up and answering the calling these last 25 years and serving us. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Love you, baby. Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't keep Regina up here, so y'all have to talk to her during the breaks. But hey, this is congratulations to you too. Just know that. Thanks for allowing us to be part of your journey in your life. And I'm also thankful, too, that God called us that 25 years ago, because as I look upon you, it reminds me that he had you on his mind. And that matters. So thank you. Yeah, great to be here.
25 years, huh?
Yeah, 25.
You tired?
A little bit.
I can see that.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Yeah, thanks.
Someone say it. I would say you look tired. Great.
I think I look tired every time I look in the mirror. Whoa.
Oh, man. So how do you do it? 25 years, like, keep showing up.
Well, it's like we talk a lot about here, and that's finding your why. Finding that God-given why, your purpose. Because if you do, then every day you know why you get up. And that's when you know at the end of every day, when you fulfilled that why, then you've had a life worth living. And so that's why, yeah.
Well, thanks.
You bet. Yeah.
Thanks for showing up.
You give God glory for that.
Continually. We all appreciate it a lot.
Thank you.
So we've got some questions.
Yeah, I've had a lot of questions lately.
So some questions that we've heard from the congregation that you just kind of want to throw out there. So let's start off fun. What's the most amazing thing that you've seen?
Yeah, man, we look back, Regina and I have been really thinking about that over the last, obviously a couple of weeks, the last couple of months. But there's so many neat things, the thing at Katrina, garage sale, half day, $10,000, go down there and then, what the church did. It's amazing. India, the children's camps we used to put on, we put on children's camps. It was crazy, wrote them, did that kind of stuff. The missional work here in our town, we don't want to just exist in a town. We want to change it, from Refresh and the different things that the church started. But I still got to tell you, though, the most meaningful thing to Regina and I, and we've talked about it, it's just really simple. It's a changed life. To sit there and see, a family resurrected, a man resurrected, a child, someone come to Christ and see their life change. That's it. That's still an amazing thing. Yeah.
It doesn't get better than that.
It does not get better than that. And just on a little bit of a personal, one of my personal goals, I hope, when I started this place, is that I'd get the privilege of being a part of seeing 1,500 people baptized.
So where you at?
I'm at 1395.
Let's go.
We're on the road, baby. We keep going.
So let's get to 1,400.
Yeah, let's do that next
week.
Sunday.
Yeah,
Sunday
we have baptism next week. So we need 5 people.
We've got
to get
several.
baptized.
We've
Okay.
got several signed up. Yeah, help me reach my goal.
So 25 years, like we saw just a small portion, honestly, of some of the amazing things that God's done in the last 25 years.
Yeah.
The big question, obviously, is like, what's next?
Oh yeah.
Where are we going?
We've been thinking about it a lot, and in the great words of that great cowboy theologian Rooster Cogburn, I shared that with y'all last week. Rooster Cogburn, true grit.
That's John Wayne for anybody under the age of 40. Okay.
Yeah. In his one of his marquee lines coming out of Bagby store, ask, are we going to keep going after Lucky Ned? Yes, pursue. We're going to continue to pursue our God-given mission, vision. That's what we're going to do. I don't see anything else. This is what God has called us to do. This is what we're all about. We're not, and I just need to tell you this, if you're a guest with us, thank you for being here today. You're on a special day, but we're not the United Way. I'm not knocking that. We're not a food pantry. Those are all goods. We're not a clothing store. We do all those things to help people. But listen, we're a spiritual entity. We are about bringing the true hope of life to people who desperately need it, and that's Jesus Christ. That's why we exist. We exist to help people discover a God-centered life. And that all came from an original vision that God gave me when we first even began to think about this. And it's in a form of a portrait. I wish I could paint. If any of you are painters, I would love to talk to you about it. But I remember it as vivid as yesterday. But if you can envision a portrait, and some of you have heard me talk about this before, but because I still see it, it's so vivid. But there's a guy standing profile in the portrait, and if you look off to the left side or the right side of the portrait, you see complete darkness. Everything from the front forward is complete darkness. It's midnight dark, not black. You can barely make it out, and you see a sidewalk, and there's people walking on it. This man, though, is standing there, profile, and he's speaking. He's got a Bible in his hand, and he's speaking into the darkness. Just little specks of light coming out. But as you look to that side of the portrait, then you look long enough and you see people walking on that sidewalk, and then all of a sudden some start to turn and they start to move towards him, and then they kneel down, and then right at his footsteps, from his face back, it's brilliant white, and you see them stoop down as an adult but come out as a child. And then as you look back towards the left of the portrait, you see them growing and they stand up, and back to the left there's a whole host of people praising and worshiping God. But then you look back towards the back of the portrait and you see them, some come back and stand next to the man speaking into the darkness. And when I saw that vision, I asked God, what is that? And he said, that's you. He said, I'm asking you to live on the edge of heaven and hell and try to bring as many to Christ as you can. And so that's where it was born, to help people find their way out of the darkness. And that's where Centerpoint was born. Yeah. And it's really easy. It's based upon, from a scriptural standpoint, it's based upon, the Great Commandment and the Great Commission, which we're committed to. And we're going to stay committed to the Great Command, the Great Commission, the Great Commandment. If you want to know what the most important thing you can do with your life is, Jesus answered it. When he walked this earth, the disciples asked him, what's the most important? If I don't get anything else right, get this right. He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, with everything in you. Do that, you win. You do that every day. If we do that every day, we've won. Then the second thing, he says, love your neighbors yourself. And then he says this, then go, here's the Great Commission, go and make disciples of all nations. Build my family. Now you got the Great Commandment and the Great Commitment, which leads to, ready, the Great Community, his family. He says in Acts as he was leaving, he says, and now you're going to be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, to the ends there. Jerusalem is at home. Judea is the surrounding area. Samaria is the adversaries to us. We're still going to go there. And then to the ends of the earth. So, for what purpose? To build his family. God never created us to be alone. Ooh, isolation is so dangerous. So he told us to build his family. He told us, and he said this too. Jesus even said this, I'm going to help you. He said, and I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. You want to be a place that the gates of hell will have to stand back from? Then be in God's church. Be in his family. Now, I'll also say this too. I know people pick on the church because, man, the church has got issues. You bet it does. What part of the world doesn't have issues? The only difference is we know we're all a bunch of cracked pots in the hands of the master healer. At least we're trying. And he says this, for people who still struggle with church, I just want to tell you this, don't forget. Let me tell you how much Jesus loved the church. He tells us in the book of Ephesians with the Apostle Paul, and he says, and this is how much Christ loves the church. It's like a husband and wife. He says, he died for her. He died for us. So, what has he called us to do? Real simple, pursue. I think if there's ever a time when the world needs God's church, it's now. Man, they need the love of God more than ever. And so, yeah, we're going to pursue.
So we're loved.
Oh, man.
And then we're called to love.
Yes.
And to build God's family, to build this community. Like, where do we do that? Is it just here, or?
No, it's yes. You know, you've asked me those questions before. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, here. Here in our community. Here across our state. You know, again, Mercy Hill. You know, oh, by the way, if y'all don't know, in the first 25 years, we built 24,000 square feet of God's kingdom here, you know, God's light here in this area. And then we've also planted 18 other churches.
18 churches.
And we're not stopping, but we're supposed to do it, yes, here, you know, across the state, across the nation, and across the world.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're going to keep doing.
So you and I talked about this about a year ago. You said, hey, you know, I really feel like as God's turning the page in the next chapter.
Yeah.
Like for Centerpoint, you said he's laid 3 things on your heart.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. At our 20th anniversary, I got a portrait of, you know, quite a few of us, and I looked at it, and I was so excited about it. So that's cool. But then God also told me, he said, Jay, I'm turning the page. I didn't know fully what that meant. Now 5 years later, I do. And he wasn't just talking about us, but he was talking about this community. And what's happened is that things are changing. And he put it on my heart that there's 3 things, basically 3 things that he wants me to do and I believe wants us to do. I've talked to the elders about it, I've talked to the staff. Everybody seems to be stepping in. The next steps. So what is the first one? Well, the first one is he really put on my heart that it's time to transition our church to the new culture and the new community that's coming here. Now, what do I mean by that? Have y'all noticed that our city is changing? No, I mean, has anybody noticed? If you haven't, you need to look up on your way home today. Go ahead, drive around. Look across the street. We've got a train station now. We've got metro on both ends of our city. We've got new construction. Our city's going through a renaissance. Go down to the new city hall and all the new building, and you know, which we were a part of. You know, I was on the committee that helped pick that location, and you know, God helped us get involved with schools and everything else. But we have a new community coming here. And what the Lord told me was, even though, and I need you to hear me carefully, although we respect our history and those who brought us here, he also told me that now it's time to start reaching for the new community that's coming. We're supposed to start transitioning. He wants me to start transitioning our culture to better meet the needs of our new community and new culture. And what's happening? Let me tell you who's moving here. Who's moving here, and we've shared this with you in visions and everything else, is they're younger couples, both professional, both educated. They've got children in their teens and middle school, and they're moving into this area. That's what's moving in. If you don't believe me, just look around. Look at who's even visiting our church. It's a steady flow. And so what the Lord has told me is, hey, you need to understand who they are, and you need to reach them. We need to transition. Okay, listen, let me put it another way. There's many in our congregation, we've been looking at those photos, who you as children you were raised here. Couples, some of you have come in here and you've grown up. And listen, we love you, but here's the deal. Now God's telling us that no longer are you just going to come here, but now you're going to begin to become the leaders. It's a new day. We have to transition that. The people who are moving here, they've got 2 driving things that are driving them, even to come here. People coming from the West Coast or East Coast, here's what they're really looking for. Well, it's cheaper here, or they can get more. No, the bigger driving force is this. They're looking for their tribe. And what do I mean by that? When it comes to their tribe, they're looking for people who believe like they believe. And you know what they're looking for? They're looking for people who believe in the God of the Bible. They're looking for the truth. They're looking for people who have family values and want to raise kids well and have good marriages. That's what they're looking for. They're moving here. And that's why even this year we're talking about who we are, our tribe, and that's what this tribe is. Yeah. Another thing they're looking for is a church that makes a difference, a positive difference in its community. You know, a church that starts things like Refresh. and finding hope and actually does something. And so that's what we're moving for. It reminds me of the Apostle Paul. It's still new, still fresh to me. When he sat there and says, listen, yes, I try to find common ground with everyone I can in order to introduce them to Christ and let Christ save some of them. Well, guess what? A new future is coming here, and we have to transition to that. That means, new leadership and new ministries to fit this new community. Now, again, I want to say this. For those of you who've been here for a while, you're going, oh, Pastor, you're going to leave us behind. Not at all. But I even had a grandmother the other day, and I have this happen every once in a while. Some of our more mature congregation, which I'm a part of it now, Grandpa.
Not tired.
Not
Mature.
tired, just mature.
Yep.
But they asked me, hey, Pastor, that song, do we have to do that? Can't we do more of this? But I just have to remind them with this question. I can honor you in two ways. One, I can honor you by repeating everything we've done, as we've always done, out of respect for you. Or I can honor you by doing things that will reach your grandchildren. And it's always the same. Please reach my grandchild, reach my child. So with that, that's what we're going to do. We're transitioning. Some of you are already seeing it. We're asking you to step up. You're going to see it on the stage. You're going to see it everywhere else. We're transitioning that new leadership.
So changing culture.
Oh, yeah.
Responding to the culture, but then number two.
Number two. The second thing that he wants us to do is to reignite our ability to grow God's kingdom, both by expanding here and then also through church planning, to reignite it. Man, COVID just shut everything down, and it's been hard, but we've been coming back. We're starting to come back, and we're starting to grow again. Again, first 25 years, 24,000 square feet, 18 church plants, all that stuff's cool. But now he wants us to keep going. He wants us to grow more. I'm reminded of what Jesus said in Matthew when he said, hey, man, you are like a city on a hill. That's what God's family is. It's like a city on a hill. The light in the darkness. I don't know about you guys, but I think our community needs God's light. Bigger than ever. Our city's growing. He wants us to grow as well. And so here we are on this hill in North Richland Hills. And we need to become more. And how do we do that? By expanding God's work through our ministries and, yes, even our own campus here at home.
Okay, so speaking of growing our own campus, let's address the elephant in the room.
Yeah, let's talk about the elephant in the room.
So what about Daring New Day?
Daring New Day. Anybody remember Daring New Day? Oh, yeah. I've got plenty of it. Okay, so in 2019, I've been asked, man, what happened to Daring New Day? Did it turn into a Daring New Dud? What happened? We had this building design, these really cool concepts, 2019. We had the plans about 70% done. We had a contractor lined up. We had the financing ready to go. We had it all set. And then everything just came to a screeching halt, 2019. And I've been asked, what happened to Daring New Day? Well, I'll tell you what happened to Daring New Day. It got sick, just like the rest of the country. Between COVID and cultural wars, COVID shut us down. It shut down churches. And it's been hard. As a matter of fact, one of the statistics coming out of COVID, it is reported by the Barna Group that over 40 million Americans have walked away from church and not come back. 40. It's been tough. And it's not just COVID, it's also cultural wars. There's division within the church about cultural issues that has been pushed on us. But we're still here. We made it. We had to pivot. We had to shift. We had to fight through, find ways. But we made it. We're still here. Now, let me just point out a few things that happened, okay? 2019, going back to the building project, right? 2019, man, the building would have cost us about $185 a foot. That would have been about a $6.5 million building. We had it financed already at 3.8%. We already had the loan in place for $7.8 million. We were ready. They offered us more than I asked for. But then in 2023, that same building will cost you $350 a square foot. That's almost $11 million. And the financing went up to 7.8%. And now our lenders cut it back to 5.6%. So guess what? That doesn't work. Also, what happened is we, just like the rest of America, our pre-attendance pre-COVID compared to now, we're down by about 20%, which is actually pretty good compared to a lot of churches. A lot of churches closed. A lot of pastors quit. It was a hard time. And then, we had to figure out how to just make it. But we did. Now, let me tell you some good news, though. In the last 4 years, back in 2019, we had a debt of $2.2 million on this building and property, which was part of the Daring New Day. It was all included in there. We were going to roll it in. It was going to be taken care of. Well, here's some good news. Today, that same debt, we no longer have $2.2 million. Now we just have $547,000 in debt. We reduced our debt in the last 4 years by $1.6 million. And all that in the midst of COVID and being shut down. We also, when we were starting, we had about $40,000 in cash. Today, we almost have $1 million in cash reserves. I mean, God just did an amazing thing. The other thing that's really cool is now we're growing again. From last year to this year, we've almost grown by 20%. In church world, that's amazing.
That's significant.
So we're getting healthy again.
So, again, elephant.
Yeah, still want to talk about the building.
Are we going to build?
Still get it. When do we go build, Pastor? Yeah. Okay, so here's when we're going to build. When it's appropriate and when we're ready. Now, let me tell you what we have done. We've gone back and we've pulled in another architect and we've reworked it. This is the new design that we're looking at now. And as you look at it, it's a lot sleeker. It's simpler. It's still got the main components that we think God wants us to carry on. But we're not done yet. As a matter of fact, we've got another firm coming in next month. We're looking at ways to do it more efficiently, more, to bring down the price, but still, that's still a pretty cool looking thing. But also it still meets the ministries, the coffee shop, the playground for the children and for parents to come in. So what I'm saying is we're going to do it when it's appropriate and we're ready. And when I think that is we've got to get our congregation built. By the way, do you guys feel it's safe to come here to this church? No, that's why I asked. Do you feel like it's safe? Do you feel like we're legit? Has it helped you? Has God worked in your life? Okay, now, here's the other thing. Do you know somebody else that could use a place like this? Then invite them. We've got to rebuild our congregation, and we've also got to rebuild our financial support. I think it can be done in a couple of years, and we'll be ready to go again, if not sooner. But yeah.
So what you kind of alluded to, like what happened to the Daring New Day contributions?
Yeah. I've been asked, what happened to those contributions that I gave? It's real simple. It was part of the original Daring New Day. We've gotten rid of all that debt, plus we still have reserves that are in interest-bearing accounts. We could, if we want to, just pay off our debt completely. And I've been asked, why don't we just do that? It's real simple. Because we can make more money on that money because our loan was so cheap. Right. We're making more money by investing that than just using it. So we've got some really sharp business people that are really leveraging us in great ways to set us up well.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you said 3 things.
Okay, well, wait a minute. We're going to expand. I got to talk about this too. We're going to expand here, but we're also going to expand through church planting.
Okay.
We hadn't walked away. As a matter of fact, we're reigniting it. We're about to reengage with Mercy Hill. It's really cool. We've got some of our former church planters that are pastors now and coaching us. Matt Bunn and Evie Vapula from India's here, and y'all make sure to talk to them, love on them. But we're getting back engaged with that, and we're going to the Dominican Republic. I'm going back the first weekend in November, and we're going to start planting there next year. So yeah.
That's awesome. So yeah, 3 things.
Okay, the third thing. Changing the culture, expanding through growth. Oh, and the third thing is the Lord has also impressed upon me that it's time to begin looking for the next generational leader that will lead this church. Your elders has put together a succession team. They did it 7 years ago. And with me, we did it together. And they have got you so prepared. Anything ever happened to me, guys, y'all would be taken care of. We have an emergency succession plan. We've got all kinds of things. But also part of that is to begin to look for that next leader. And so, yeah, that's what we're going to start doing.
You found him?
I'm sorry, what?
Have you found him yet?
I don't know. Maybe.
Any plans to retire?
No.
Good.
When it comes to my retirement, guys, I've been asked that. I feel like as long as I stay relevant, and I think I'm still relevant. Am I still relevant, church?
Yeah.
I still think I'm still relevant. I try. I think I have told the elders, I don't want to ever stand in the way. And so I get audited by them. Am I relevant, guys? Am I still bringing to you what you need? And as of right now, I feel pretty good about that. I still got a lot of wind in my lungs and a lot of passion in my heart.
Amen to that.
And so I tell you what, I've been asked that 2 or 3 times. Anybody else want to ask me that? You show up at our 30th anniversary and ask me then. But for right now, I don't want to talk about it anymore. I want to just move on. Okay?
So,
fair?
So we've talked about it, like our next step, like what's next for our church as a whole. But as individuals, as families, like what's our next step? Like, what do we need to do?
Yeah. So, yeah. I say this without apology. He captured my heart in my mid-20s. And I'll say this without apology. The greatest single decision you could ever make with your life is to give it to Jesus Christ. To give your life to Jesus Christ. To commit your life to Him. And then commit your life to Him and His family. Commit your life to something that matters eternally. Because at the end of the day, it's the only thing that will matter. Lean in. What will He offer you? Nothing but a life worth living. So that's what I encourage you to do. That would be your next step.
So kind of what that looks like for us, that committing our life to Christ. For some of us in here, that may be for the very first time, like you give your heart and soul to Jesus and accept that relationship. For some of us in here, it's that, like what Jesus said at the very beginning when we were talking about it. It's, love Him with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. For some of us, that means, as Pastor Jay would say, we need to lean in. We need to commit to service. We need to commit to growing in our leadership, taking the next step in our faith here. That means we need to participate in giving, being a part of continuing to expand God's kingdom right here. That's what the next step looks like for us. And so look, I'm going to pray for us in just a second and lead us out of here. But that's what that commitment looks like for us, Center Point. Are we ready for the next 25?
Yeah, man. Let's roll, baby.
Hey, let's pray. Lord, we are so incredibly thankful.